Hey, welcome everybody in Chiefs Kingdom. This is Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest, and 712. So I beat the 713 over under of Brandon's. Apologize for the late start, everyone tonight. It was Nancy's birthday tonight, so I got to make pizza. That was what she wanted for her birthday, and I guess I'm world renowned, or at least world renowned in my house. For homemade pizza, and I do kind of go overboard with it. So includes making the dough from scratch, making the sauce from scratch, shredding all the cheese. I did not. I cut back a little bit. I did not use fresh mozzarella tonight. I cheated and just used processed mozzarella. I feel a little dirty about that, but it's at least the first couple of pies are done. Come back and make some more later, but I had to come in and get the podcast started, get the live Q&A going. As always, Nick Jacobs will be joining us here in a little bit, and I will make sure to give him his 30 seconds to warm up and not just throw him in the room before he is ready. Love seeing that the chat is already going and everything. Obviously, we heard from Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Nick Bolton on Monday, and if you haven't heard that or seen that, you can find those entire press conferences on the Chiefs Digest YouTube channel and catch them all. There was a little bit of Andy Reid's that we did not get because his computer froze at the very beginning during his opening statement. So we missed that. But basically what he was just talking about during that segment that we missed was the process for offseason workouts. This is phase one, started on Monday. And as the Chiefs have done the last few years and since COVID, taking advantage of going virtual during the first phase. The first phase in the NFL guidelines, you really don't get to do much. The first phase, which is really the first couple of weeks before the NFL draft, is almost entirely calisthenics, stretching. There's no football work, no teamwork on the field. Don't even really do individual drills with the coaches or anything. You can work on your own. But most of it is really just it's either rehab, like I said, working out, calisthenics, strength and conditioning, all of that. There's not really a whole lot of football work that goes on during phase one, except for the meetings. And Andy Reid's figured out that it's worked pretty well to do those meetings virtually, let the players continue to work on their own wherever they want to be. And if you're Patrick Mahomes and the pass catchers, you just go down to Dallas and work out on your own. And I continue to be absolutely befuddled that people around the league are not borrowing and stealing this, that they're still going with the same old tried and true methods. I want to say tried and true. They're not really tried and true anymore. I mean, I think Andy Reid, obviously, Chiefs have a good team here, but he's also, I think, figured out a pretty good system. Now, if the Chiefs have a season when they bow out early in the playoffs or, go 8-9, will he change things? Maybe. But his rationale obviously has been that the team's been making deep runs in the playoffs the last couple of years. Give them a couple of more weeks to rest up. I think that's a bit of a PR answer, because I think that the other part of it is that it's just an absolutely great way to work around the NFL practice guidelines. Because if the Chiefs were up here and everybody was in town, then, and Mahomes and the pass catchers were all here, the only way they'd be able to get football work done, and the only way that Mahomes can be throwing to receivers is if they go out to some high school field. They'd be lucky if they can get on a college field, but because usually what teams do and players do is they go out to a high school field and work on their own. Well, now Mahomes is able to go down to Dallas in a facility where the players can get together. They can do their workouts. Like if you heard Mahomes talking about on Monday, they've got a schedule set up. So if the players who want to get up early in the morning and get a workout in before they do some throwing and catching, they can do that. They can get a workout in the afternoon. There's a lot of bonding that is going on down there. So it's really been a great system. And then other guys like Nick Bolton is out in Arizona. He's continuing to work. And as he said, taking advantage of the warm weather out there. It's hot here in Kansas City right now, but it's not always going to be hot this time of year. So gives them a chance to continue working out. And, other guys are going to be working in, Miami. That's where Chris Jones usually is this time of year. Some players will be working out in groups. Some will be working on their own in their own homes, their own facilities. It's a great way to make it work. And yeah, I mean, I don't think a brand new coach could pull it off. But a coach who's been installed for a few years, I think could do things the same way and take advantage of it. It just surprised me that nobody else has, because at least Andy Reid's figured out a way to make it work the last couple of years. And I think it's been pretty effective. So I'm sure there'll be some questions that came up from what the coach and the players said yesterday. But I'll just, since I'm running a little bit late tonight, I'll just go ahead and start on the questions. Sharon's got one that I wish we had gotten to yesterday. What is the Chiefs' policy, formal or informal, regarding safeguarding the current playbook? Rice having it while out with the buddies and then leaving it in the car, it should be a concern. Yeah, Sharon, it is. And I have a lot of questions about that whole situation. Maybe it's not described real well, because for the most part, I'm surprised that Rashee Rice would have a printed playbook. I mean, I get that, they probably still have some, and maybe some of the players do get them. Maybe it's easier for them, or maybe the coaches want them to have specific things. Maybe they have printed out for them. Maybe everybody still has a printed playbook, and I'm just not aware of it. I'm just aware that a lot of players, view the playbook on their surfaces. I mean, their tablets. So I'm kind of surprised that, that there would be a printed playbook. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it is a tablet that was labeled playbook or Proper Kansas City Chiefs playbook or something of that nature, and that's why it was described that way in the police report. I don't know. I do know, the next time that we do get Andy Reid available, which it will be next week during the draft, and I do like to make sure the questions are on topic. I don't know if I will ask it next week during the draft, because we're really trying to get questions in about the draft and who the Chiefs picked. And I don't know that I'll necessarily ask it then, but certainly during the Chiefs' first OTA, I do want to ask about the playbook situation with Rashee Rice and how the team kind of comes down about that and what their policy is. Am interested in that. Now, once again, I'm assuming too that, hey, there's a rule. Obviously, there's legal aspects of chain of evidence and all of that about the playbook being in the property of the police. So you would think it's not going to fall into the hands of another NFL team. I'm sure there's probably some lawyers I should talk to as far as how that would work. Just making sure that doesn't fall into the wrong hands, or that people don't get copies of it, or people who shouldn't be seeing the playbook or seeing the playbook. But I am, because Sharon, you make an interesting point, which is that usually, I mean, especially in the old days, I mean, players were pretty much instructed to, guard the playbook with your life. If you lose your wallet and your playbook, you're not calling the bank first, you're calling the team first, and you're trying to find the playbook. You're not calling to cancel any credit cards first, you're worried about the playbook. So I'm interested in that too. And I've been talking with some people about that same thing. So I am kind of curious to see what the Chiefs have to say about that being in the police report with Rashee Rice and what happened with it. I can't imagine that's actually Nick J71, but there you go. Who's listening to 41 is the mic? If you have, thank you very much. We do appreciate it. And if you haven't, then why do you hate us so much? I hope that is Nick. I've never seen his YouTube account, so it could very well be the case. But that actually says it for me. I don't think that you hate us if you haven't listened to 41 is the mic yet, but we do want to be your friends. So yes, absolutely. Jeremy, what exactly goes on at a player visit? Why that versus a pro day? Great question. And, and during a pro day, there's obviously a couple of different types of pro days. The most common are the ones that colleges hold. And now the Big 12, like for instance, is holding as a conference. That's, where players, like Mizzou and Kansas have pro days for all of their seniors and players who are leaving to participate. You'll often see even the other local colleges, maybe from Missouri State, Washburn, anywhere else that's in an area might go to a bigger college pro day that's near them, because not all schools have those pro days. But the pro days are just a couple hours long. You'll get some meeting times, but there can be anywhere from 6 to 32 teams at these pro days that show up, and there'll be scouts and general managers, sometimes head coaches, if there's quarterbacks involved and big players that everybody wants to see. But it's basically a one-day combine for those pro days. Players come in, they do all of their testing. So it's just like the combine. They'll do bench press. You've just seen the videos of like the guy out jumping the vertical jump measuring stick. They'll do a long jump, broad jump. They'll go out on the football field after they get done in the weight room to go out onto the football field. They'll do the 40. They'll do the cone drill, all of that. Same drills that they do at the combine, they'll do there. And then afterwards and before and during, the scouts will talk to them, do interviews with players that they want to talk a little bit more to. That's why sometimes you'll see general managers and head coaches who go because maybe they want to talk to a player off to the side and get some more information from them. It's basically just a one-day process where you are, as a scout or a GM, you're getting information on 10, 20, 30 players. You might be participating in that pro day. The player visits, the teams get 30 of them. They're called top 30 visits because the idea at one time was obviously that, your top 30 players could come in and you could interview them. They're not really top 30. Teams use them in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the Chiefs brought in Patrick Mahomes for a 30 visit because they wanted to get to know their guy that they were thinking about drafting number one. You took every opportunity they could to meet with him. Those visits, and even the pro day visits, they still matter. But now that the NFL has liberalized the rules and players can do Zooms with teams, because once upon a time that was not allowed. So literally the only time that you could talk to players would have been at the combine, where you can do formal or informal interviews. The formal interviews are sit downs for a specific period of time. I think usually like 15, 30 minutes. It can vary, I believe. Sometimes informal is just, literally, hunting down a guy in a hallway and talking to him for a few minutes. That's why you'll often hear, at the combine ask about, formal or informal interviews. These player visits, though, these 30 visits that teams get, they get spent an entire day. So usually the player will come into town either late the night before or early the day of. They'll come into the facility. Usually, teams come all out. So, the player gets the facility to be somebody that drives them in. I don't even use Uber, because most of the player visits I've seen in Kansas City, it's somebody on staff drives them in, or if they do have them escorted, it's like a limo service or a stretch SUV or just a really nice SUV. It's a limousine company, that they'll charter out for these visits. It's not like an Uber or a Lyft. They're taking care of these players a little bit more than that. So they come in, they'll greet them. It's a little bit of a recruiting visit because they're trying to convince the guy that this is the place where they will want to be. So there's a little salesmanship, trying to make them proud to be fun to be there. Might put them on a locker with their jersey in it, with their number and everything, make them feel comfortable, make them like that. But these 30 visits, they can be done for a lot of different reasons. One is obviously the interview process. You get a chance to talk to the player, learn about them, know about them. You might do one of these if it's a player that you think is a fantastic player, but you've got some character concerns. A lot of times they're done for medical purposes. Even though players get their medicals done at the combine, there might be some things that you have a follow-up on, especially if a player's coming off an injury. So they're going to go through an exam with your team doctors. So Rick Burkholder and his staff will go through and look at a player's medical history, through that with them, may even do some of their own tests. Sometimes they may even do x-rays or MRIs if there's a concern about an injury that the player has. And then, you may have heard a little bit about how like Mahomes has went through, but then they will go through and do, like interviewing of the player. If it's a quarterback, they might have him on the chalkboard, diagramming a play. Say, hey, what was your bread and butter play in college? Show us that. What was your worst play in college? Diagram that for us. What's something that you have trouble with? Diagram that for us. They can get them on the field so they can run through some, drills, anything like that. It's basically an all day process. So, and they'll sit down with coaches. They'll talk with the GMs. They can talk with anybody. A lot of times, when you're coming in for one of these 30 visits, if you're a player, in addition to, work it out a little bit, in addition to the medical, you may talk to the head coach, you may talk to your coordinator, your position coach, the GM, an area scout. You might do 6 or 7 interviews with people that day. It's really just an opportunity for the team to really dive in on a player and learn more about them and make sure it's somebody they want to take. And so long answer, but I don't know if we really talk about it enough, to kind of describe, why you might do that, and why you need to do that, and maybe in addition to or instead of, going to a player's pro day. Especially with, the communication that you can have now with players, especially, virtual, that's allowed that you didn't used to be able to. It is different, but those 30 visits are still pretty critical. And every year the Chiefs will take at least one, if not more, players that they had 30 visits with. I think Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, I think had 30 visits. Patrick Mahomes obviously was a 30 visit. There's some players that this year are doing some 30 visits that I have no doubt that the Chiefs, if they get a chance, will absolutely take. So you see those lists of the players, and I think that we now know maybe about 18 or 19 that have been kind of sussed out about who has been doing 30 visits with the Chiefs. So those are pretty informative. Now, sometimes they'll do a 30 visit and it makes them completely eliminate a player. So it's not 100%. You see somebody on a 30 visit that the Chiefs will take, because sometimes, they'll bring a player in and say, wait a minute, you know what? This guy's coming off an Achilles injury. It's a lot worse than we thought. We're not taking him. Or there's no way this guy can grasp our offense or grasp our defense. He can't diagram a play. Nobody's taking him. We're not taking him. So not 100%, but it's definitely, those visits are key for teams that really have some questions about a player. And, and that's the thing, is that it's not just, for first round draft picks. You will see late round picks, undrafted players that teams will bring in for 30s, just because, they want to get a chance. Maybe they've seen something on tape that they really like this guy. Maybe they could not get to their pro day because it's a small college and there were 18 different people, every 18 different pro days that they had that same day, so they couldn't get to. So there's a lot of reasons why, that they might have a guy come in for a 30 visit. So, but they're pretty useful. They're very useful. They really are. They have a big role to play as far as, players getting into the league and which teams they end up going to. Round Rock, question about league suspensions. I don't think players are allowed into practice facilities, but what about interaction with players such as offseason throwing sessions? Good point, which, the players can only come into team facilities during really two times. I mean, if they're on a 30 visit that we just talked about, or they're in there for the local pro day that teams can have. And, the Chiefs had theirs a couple of weeks ago. I think they had 33 players, from a lot of schools in Kansas, Missouri. I think there may have been some from Nebraska, Iowa. It's another opportunity because some of these players were absolutely players that the Chiefs saw at maybe the Missouri, Kansas State pro days, but they want to see him more. So they come in, and it's a great way for the players to get exposure. So they're allowed in then, but you're pretty much right. I mean, that's pretty much it. However, there is no NFL rule whatsoever about draft picks coming in and college players who are eligible for the draft working out with NFL players off-site. No rule. So the Chiefs are taking advantage of that. And there's no doubt. I mean, the first year the Chiefs did this, there were some teams that were like, wait a minute, not sure this is kosher, but there's nothing prohibiting it. I mean, and the Chiefs checked with the NFL to make sure that everything was right. And the reality of it is that it happens all the time. We usually don't know about it. But you got is it Axos in Miami that a lot of draft picks train at? There's several of these around the country that are big training facilities that professional athletes, go to work out and get some training and work with coaches. And draft picks use them too. So for years, there have been NFL players who work out alongside, incoming draft picks. It's just never been a big deal. But now that, Mahomes has been kind of this thing down in Dallas, and rookie receivers are figuring out, hey, if I can finagle an invite to that and come hang out with Mahomes, there's no rule against it. So no, there's no worry about suspensions or anything like that. I mean, until the NFL passes a rule against it. And I really can't see them doing it. I mean, once again, I'm really surprised that more teams don't take advantage of this. By letting their players work out for longer or even during this OTA period, this offseason training period, of working out more on their own so they can do these kind of things. I mean, it's genius to me that the Chiefs and Patrick and Andy Reid and Brett Veach and whomever it is that was really the driver behind this whole thing. I think it's just genius. But why other teams have not picked it up, I have no idea. I wanted to highlight this because, Matt, I agree. Mahomes, I think this is the second year now that he's done his interview with us for the opening of the offseason program from his billiard room down in Dallas in his house. It's pretty sweet. Like Kathy says, it does look roomy. No, anywhere that Patrick does his Zooms from always look pretty good. But I am jealous of the billiards room. That looks pretty good. I think those guys, when they're hanging out with Patrick down in Dallas, I think they have a good time hanging out at his house. So it's great to see everybody. I love the conversation. I'm still getting the part before I showed up. So Jesus Perez, what position should the Chiefs double dip at the draft? Very good question. Right now, obviously with the 7 draft picks, I think anybody would say if you're going to double dip at one position, it's going to be wide receiver. And I can't really argue with that because I think that both early and late, there's going to be good players. Going through the mock draft exercises, and I've got my second one, had some technical difficulties. I won't throw the PFF draft simulator under the bus. Oh wait, yeah, I am going to. Froze up on me last night while I was doing my mock draft, so I'm having to rebuild it a little bit. But wide receiver makes the best because as I go through these exercises, I'm not really excited about maybe some of the late third into the 4th round aspects of the draft. I think there's a lot of really good receivers at the top. I think depending upon when the talent kind of hits after the first maybe 12 or 13, and depending on where you get them. But I really like maybe the top 13, 14 receivers in this draft. That's how deep it goes. But that might be, good grief, that could even be late second before the talent starts running out. And then I think there's a little bit of a group of receivers that I'm not really enamored with. Then there's another group behind them that I think that have all got a lot of upside to them. Maybe there's just something wrong with them. Maybe they've been in college too long because it's COVID. Therefore, they're like 23 or 24, and that's kind of a drawback. Maybe they're testing. Maybe they're just not. They don't show as much speed as you think they are, or as much strength as you need. Maybe it's the other side. Maybe they get great testing, but their size is terrible. Like a 5'8" receiver that's not very fast, well, maybe that's why I also have a 30 visit just to make sure and double check on what's wrong with them. 6'4", but really slow. Maybe to check that too. But sometimes, it's there's a lot of like late round receivers. I think like a Luke McCaffrey in the 5th round, or Joshua Cephas, who I took in one of my mock drafts in the 7th round. I think there's a lot of, once again, it's that 5th, 6th, and 7th round. A lot of players who maybe just have one thing that you have a question mark about them. Maybe there's just something that doesn't make them a well-rounded prospect like the guys at the top. But I think there's some value there. So receiver is one. I'd have a hard time, I think, making a case for double dipping at another position. The only thing that I guess if you wanted to stretch the definition to just a position group, because could the Chiefs take 2 offensive linemen? Possibly. I could absolutely see them taking a tackle and a guard. Could they take 2 defensive backs? I'm not feeling that they need to really take a corner. They can if they want to, because if they like a corner that they want to give to Dave Merritt, I'm not going to argue with them because they've been drafting corners way too well and coaching them up way too well to argue with that strategy. But I could also see them taking a safety. So if they took a safety and a corner, I could see that. Technically, defensive line, I that group too, an edge and a tackle, I could see that. So that's the only places I could really see them double dipping. I'd be surprised if there was anywhere else that they did that. And like I said, I'm stretching the group to a group there, but the one position that I think would make the most sense, obviously, is receiver. You throw a couple of darts at that one, and the Chiefs they double and triple dipped at corner before. I just don't think they have to do that this year with the depth that they already have, even with the L'Jarius Sneed going. With the depth that they have, I don't think that they need to do that. I don't think they feel the need to do that. And with the way that they've been coaching these guys up, yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, thank you. I'll make sure Nancy sees that. Usually she watches the live Q&A at some point, even if it's on the recording. So that's very nice of you. I will make sure that she sees that. So you are all very kind. Now this is an argument. Well, not an argument in our house. It's just the differences, because I'm a carnivore, so I have to have meat on my pizza. I believe that if God intended us to eat vegetables on our pizza, He would not have invented salad. So I will make. For myself, when I go back to the kitchen, I'm going to make 2 pizzas for myself. One's going to be pepperoni, and the other one will be sausage, barbecue sauce, and cheddar cheese. So barbecue pizza. Nancy eats 2 pizzas that I just can't stand. So she will have sausage and mushroom, which is perfectly acceptable. There's no problem there. And then a cheeseburger pizza, which we do make with mushrooms, with sausage. So it's actually a sausage pickle pizza. Not my jam, but ultimately, Jeremy, pepperoni is absolutely my favorite, but I will eat anything with meat. Minsky's prime cut that just throws like the sausage and the bacon and the pepperoni and everything on there. Yeah, that's pretty good. Dennis, Chiefs cap is 19 to 20 million, but we don't have to count the money we will need for drafted rookies, like 5 to 7 million. Yeah, around there. I mean, I haven't seen and obviously it'll change depending on, if the Chiefs make any trades or anything of that nature. But yeah, you're usually in the 5 to 7 million for your draft picks. Everything's, slotted. So you got a pretty good, feel for your pool of how much money you're going to spend on your draft picks. But yeah, that's account for that. Absolutely. And remember too, this time of year, it only counts the top 51 contracts. So, even when you bring in your rookies, it won't increase how much of cap space you're taking up, because those rookies are just going to knock out some, low end veteran minimum contracts. Some of the rookies will even, come in below that. So, some of the rookies won't even count in the top 51 sometimes. But yeah, but this time of year, you're only counting the top 51. So of that, say right now, Chiefs are at 19, throw in 5 to 7 for the rookies. You're going to count another basically 1.5. Well, and, once you get to 53, the rookies will be included in that, but you got to include 2 more, veteran contracts. You got to include the 17, which will probably, 16 practice squad contracts, since one won't count because it'll be an international pathway player. But those 16 will be, like $3.5 million or so that they'll count. Then you got to be ready for anybody who goes on injured reserve and accounting for their salary when you sign somebody else to replace them. So yeah, I mean, Brett Veach likes to have between 5 to 10 million when he goes into the season in September. So they don't have a ton of space, but they got a little bit to play with. So yes, see, Gary, pepperoni is the top. Makes a cup that holds the grease. I'll admit, I mean, now that I'm getting older and everything, I do try to make my pizza a little bit less greasy. So even if I get some of the king of greasy pizzas, Pizza Hut, I might dab off a little bit of the grease. I mean, I'm trying to live a little bit healthier. And I have gotten some of I couldn't find it at the grocery store today. Maybe they stopped making it. I can see why. Maybe it's probably some sort of chemical process and not healthy for you. But Hormel had the I think it was the pepperonis that were pepperonis that would crisp up really good on top and kind of curl up and everything and be really, really crispy. I really enjoyed those, but I could not find them today. I don't know if they just took them off the market because I was the only one that used them or what, but I'll stop talking about pizza at some point. Joe, are the Chiefs shopping Trey Smith? I have not seen any evidence that they are. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be the craziest thing, but I think if you're going to try and get a three-peat, I think you want Trey Smith there. I mean, hey, if the Chiefs draft a guard or a center high in this draft, on Thursday or Friday night, I might think that there's something, to the idea of shopping Trey Smith, but I can't imagine it. I mean, like I said, there's a certain reason to it. But at the same time, anybody who traded for Trey Smith knows they're going to have to give him a $20 million contract, next year. So I don't know. I mean, you don't normally see those kind of trades as far as a player of Trey Smith's caliber that a team like the Chiefs, end up trading in a situation like this, where they're going to be a contender again. And hey, they are trying to go for a three-peat here. But there's no doubt. I mean, the Chiefs do have a challenge when it comes to Trey, Creed, and Nick Bolton in this offseason because you only have one franchise tag. You need to get one of those guys done. And the way that the guard market has gone in the NFL, if Trey Smith has another season like he's been having and is a Pro Bowl caliber player and is healthy, plays all 17 games, no injuries, the way that the guard market is going, he is going to be a $20 million player next year. And that's going to be tough to keep. So I'm working under the assumption that, the Chiefs will probably end up using the franchise tag in either Creed or Nick, whichever one that they can't get a deal done with. Get them both done, and then you can use it on Trey. I mean, that's a possibility. But even then, I mean, the franchise tag for Trey Smith would be $20 million each dollars just because of the way the market has gone. So, to me, it's, I don't know. I wouldn't want to see it. And I also say that just from my standpoint of, I mean, Trey Smith's one of the greatest players in that locker room as far as just a person goes. The accolades that he got after the shooting and helping those kids stay calm and the way that he, obviously behaved in that situation, that is just who Trey Smith is. He is that kind of dude. So, I mean, I would hate to see him go because he is just absolutely a world-class person in addition to being the kind of player he is. Joe, wouldn't the player only receive plays he's responsible in learning and not the full playbook? I mean, well, in Andy Reid's offense, you got to know all the plays. I mean, there's, as they've, players have said before, there's more than 400 plays in the offense. But if you're a receiver, you're expected in Andy Reid's offense, you're expected to know all three positions. So you're not just, learning the X, the Y, or the Z. You're learning every single one of them. So you got to be prepared to play any position. So, yeah, I mean, that's why, you might have some position groups and some players who are going to get a streamlined playbook. But, that's another thing, too, is that, a key, and especially in, even defensively in Steve Spagnuolo's defense, it helps if you know the responsibilities of the players next to you. So it's not just, your role. To be successful, I think on both sides of the ball in Kansas City, you need to not only know your job, you need to know the jobs of what the guys responsible next to you are responsible for. So, yeah, I mean, certainly like an offensive player for the Chiefs, I mean, you're going to need to know everything. There's only maybe a few positions. I mean, I could see, hey, a fullback, back in the day for the Chiefs. I mean, Anthony Sherman, maybe he gets a streamlined version of the playbook. I don't even know that. I mean, because he would have to, they would expect him to know probably every single tight end route and roll. So, yeah, I mean, they would receive more than that. So, but it's a legitimate question. I mean, just as far as how much information was in the playbook that Rashee Rice had. Probably my last question about the playbook, unless there's a really good one. And I know Nick's finishing up his grocery shopping, so he'll be pretty soon. So maybe we'll bounce a playbook question off of him too. But Cody, regarding the playbook, my connections in a different org, playbooks are 99% of the time a tablet nowadays. It makes it easy to associate plays practice that week and upload new ones during install. Oh yeah, I mean, there's absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing about the tablets that they use now. Which is that, it can be updated remotely. If you've got plays that you're taking out, new installs, you can, put in, and, you can then, I've seen, some players show me that, you get a play, then you can click on the play and obviously it can take you to when you ran that play in practice. So you can see what you did. You can watch your film of it. You get cut ups, on those tablets too. So, like I asked Andy Reid this question a few years ago about kind of how their process was about, with Mahomes as far as going through and evaluating his film, like one of the things that they put on the tablet is that there'll be a cut up of every single one of his, Z ends. So it's like every time that you had a route where the Z receiver was running an in route, he said, maybe there's 20 of them. So, they're all going to be back, all in one cut up. So you can see every single time that Mahomes made that throw, and then he can say, okay, well, hey, wait a minute, there were 17 good ones. Here were 2 bad ones. Here was one that was kind of iffy. Yeah, I mean, it's all, I mean, that's why I'm very surprised that there would be a hard copy of a playbook in Rashid's possession in that car. I would expect it to be on a tablet, unless for some reason, like he printed it out on his own or they printed it out for him. I'm not even just, like I said, maybe there's a possibility that it's just the tablet that was labeled Chiefs Playbook, and that's why it went into the police report that way. Des the Gym, when should we hear from Veach? The expectation is that he is going to do a press conference with us on Thursday. So this week, so the 18th is when we should be hearing from Brett Veach. Unless there's any change. And then obviously, next week during the draft, we'll be interested to see how the Chiefs do it. Last year we heard from Andy and Brett on Thursday night after the first round. I could see them doing that at the same schedule this year, unless they trade out of the first round, in which case I could see them maybe, pushing Andy back to Friday. I am kind of hoping selfishly that they do it the same way, because that meant last year that Mike Borgonzi came out and wrapped up the draft on Friday night, which was a lot of fun. So then we get kind of a third voice, even if you're not hearing from Andy or Brett on Friday night, hearing from Mike is to me a kind of a refreshing change of pace. So that's kind of cool. So I hope to do it the same way, just because we get to hear from all 3 of them. But Brett's pre-draft press conference is scheduled to be on Thursday. So look for that, and hopefully I'll be able to get that up on Chiefs Digest as well if you don't find it elsewhere. Scott, do you like the idea of bringing Donovan Smith back? I don't see us getting a quality tackle in the draft, and I don't see Wanye as ready to be the main man yet at left tackle. I mean, that's $1 million question. And I think the Chiefs are kind of in that same spot. I think that my impression is that if they were able to get a day one starting left tackle in the draft, they're going to look at it really, really super hard. What Brett Veach told us at the combine that he was looking for there was competition. And I think that's one of the things that they are looking at, if for no other reason than to kind of get out of Wanye Morris, is that if he is going to be, potential starter left tackle, that it's just not given to him, that he has to earn it, that he has to fight somebody for it. So yeah, I think that Donovan, I think for both the Chiefs and for Donovan Smith, I get the sense that both sides were fine with waiting until after the draft to see what happens, because I think it's pretty clear Donovan Smith doesn't necessarily want to come back to Kansas City if they draft a replacement, because he doesn't want to back up somebody. He wants to start. So if the Chiefs are going to draft a starting left tackle, he's probably going to want to go elsewhere. If the Chiefs don't draft a tackle and say, yeah, Donovan, there's a pretty good chance you're going to start because we don't think that Wanye is ready yet, then yeah, I wouldn't have any problems with them bringing Donovan Smith back. I think you absolutely need some depth there. So I think it works out fine both ways. So if anything happens with Donovan, I would expect it to be shortly after the draft. If the Chiefs take a tackle, I would assume he's not coming back. But if they don't, I think there's a pretty good chance that he won't be back if they take a tackle. Des the Gym, can current players interact with the ones on the 30 visits? That's a good question. I believe that they can. I think there's something as far as, working out with the players, so I think there's a limitation on that, because players can work out. So I think that there may be something in there that allows them to do position drills. And so therefore, if you've got a quarterback that needs to throw to receiver, that kind of thing. But obviously this time of year, you're not allowed to do any teamwork, and players are not, required. Unless, obviously like last week, teams could start the offseason program, to hire a brand new coach. But remember, until recently, the players haven't been in the building. And for the Chiefs right now, they don't have very many players in the building. So yeah, you can interact. There's no hey, if you see, so-and-so walking down the hallway, you have to act like they're not there. No, it's not like that. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's just a limit on what they can do. I mean, they can talk, but they can't do any field work. But that makes sense anyway, because the players this time of year in the offseason program can't do any field work either. So that's really kind of the limit there. And I would imagine there's a pretty good chance if you got a player on a 30 visit, and they're on the field working, you probably have a coach that's throwing to them or something like that. So, and certainly coaches like working them through things. So, Joe, sorry of a football subject. Whitey Herzog passing away at 92. Did you ever interview him? I did not. But obviously, I mean, followed Whitey for years and years and years. Wasn't really, I was alive, but not really conscious of Whitey when he was with the Royals. So growing up with him at the Cardinals was much more. And I've mentioned it before. I mean, I was a Royals fan first, a Cardinals fan second until the 1985 World Series, in which case I then completely swore off the Cardinals forever and ever. So if you're a Cardinals fan, I'm sorry, but Whitey was one of a kind. Even if I hated the Cardinals after that, hard to hate Whitey Herzog. He was one of a kind. He absolutely did an incredible job in Kansas City. Wonder what would have happened if he'd stuck around, but Whitey was a lot too, so I know why it took a lot. But I remember I was working at a radio station in Springfield when Whitey left the Cardinals, and I remember just because we were the Cardinals affiliate in Springfield, so I just remember just how big the news was and running around getting the press conference up and everything on the air, because it was kind of a hurry up. I hope Whitey's out. So yeah, it's a sad one. Whitey was one of a kind. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Marcelino, with tight end not being a big money position, 16 million Kelsey, do you think it's why Kansas City not drafting one and just pay a free agent like Pitts when available in a couple of years? Now I see why Nick's not here, because I did not send him the stream. So let me do that real quick as I talk about that. I don't think that it's that as much as, one, that the Chiefs just have not seen a tight end that they feel like has been investing in the right spot to replace Kelsey. And I mean, I say this as, I feel like that they've been playing with fire as far as not having a backup for Travis, behind him that's, of a certain caliber. Noah Gray's fine player. He's not Travis Kelsey. The free agents that they've had come in are not Travis Kelsey. Irv Smith I think can be a fine tight end, not Travis Kelsey. In this year's draft, who's Travis Kelsey? Brock Bowers is probably about the only one you can make a case for. I don't think there's anybody else that's anywhere close to Travis Kelsey. Now, last year, I think looking back at the draft last year, you could arguably say that the Chiefs maybe missed an opportunity, that they could have gotten a tight end, drafted one last year at 32, maybe even traded back into the second round if they wanted to, although, trading out of 32 on the draft in Kansas City, I don't think was ever on the table. But, I think that maybe last year was the opportunity that they maybe missed one. But I don't think it's the money as much as anything else. I mean, I think that they could absolutely pay another tight end. Anybody else that you're going to pay, honestly, as a free agent is, Travis has been one of the higher paid tight ends. You're not going to reset the market for anybody like that. I mean, Travis Kelsey's one of a kind. So, if you bring somebody else in, I mean, unless you're going out and signing George Kittle, you're not going to pay your next tight end $20 million at the top of the market. I mean, you're going to pay somebody less than that to be Travis Kelsey. And I think obviously what you hope is that you can find someone in the draft. Chiefs just haven't done that yet. And we'll see what they do this year. I mean, like I said, I'm not enamored with this year's tight end draft class. There's a couple that I like. After Brock Bowers, not anybody that I see that is Travis Kelsey though. So, maybe the Chiefs feel differently. Maybe there's a guy out there that they feel's got, something that they can coach up. So, I don't know. Luttrell, this is a good one, because I am just absolutely, when it comes to some things, I will eat absolute garbage. And, because I've had DiGiorno's and some of these things and, whatever, and some of the nice ones. But I tell you what, I mean, I am fine with a just absolute garbage Totino's pizza. And when those things, you could get those things 10 for $10, I was all over that. Now, I mean, I think that's probably why, I was the weight that I was. So that probably is bad sign about the frozen pizzas. But frozen pizza is one of those things that it's kind of like, for me, macaroni and cheese and stuffing. Um, Cheaper the better. I mean, I don't need the fancy stuff. I will eat the absolute cheapest garbage that you got. Pano, Tavondre Sweat from Texas looks like he's going to be a wash like Keandre Coburn was. Bad physical shape and not a hard worker, it seems, from Dan's opinion. Was that Coburn's demise? I don't think that was the case. I mean, I'm not even sure we can say quite a demise for Keandre Coburn yet, because he's still young. I mean, the Titans signed him away. Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, allowed the chance that they could lose him by putting him on the waiver wire, which they did lose him, and then he was signed off the practice squad. I think last year it was probably more of a conditioning issue. I mean, Keandre came in as a really, really big guy. And I think he was probably a little bit more like Colin Saunders in that sense. I mean, he was in the Colin Saunders shape. He was, Colin Saunders sized, and stamina, and durability was an issue for Colin early on. So I think that was probably a little bit more of it, was just Keandre getting into that condition. I did not see any evidence or hear from any of the coaches that work or anything of that nature that there was any red flags with Keandre. So we'll see what happens with him going forward. Obviously, there's some red flags with Tavondre, so we'll see what happens. I have not yet gotten my hourglass to measure how much time it takes before I let Nick Jacobs into the room. But the fact that I've waited this long and that he is trying not to laugh right now, I think means that I can bring
Hi! I'm here in the Hy-Vee aisle right now.
Yes, you are. Trying to see what's behind you. Is it?
It's the peanut butter and jelly.
I thought it was the peanut butter. I thought it was the peanut butter and jelly aisle. So.
Yeah, actually, for anybody that's wondering why I picked this, in all honesty, now that we've done this, I'm going to pick a random aisle each week to take a photo of and put behind the Q&A now. But my aunt, she was in town for the farm sale and everything. So she had a flight yesterday. She stopped by and she wanted to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I didn't have the right peanut butter. So I actually sent her this photo and I was like, any suggestions? And I just thought, hey, what a great background, since everybody knows I'm always grocery shopping on a Tuesday.
I have a follow-up question. What is the correct peanut butter?
For me or for her?
Well, both.
I get the natural Jift. Tonight I'm gonna try it's the honey with peanut butter. I'm gonna see how that works out. But she apparently did not like the natural version of the peanut butter.
Okay. What was her take on the peanut butter?
She likes the Jift. She just didn't want it to be the. She didn't want it to be the healthy version. I'm like, well, all right then.
I mean, I'm creamy Peter Pan all the way. So I
had that available, and I had Reese's peanut butter too back there. But Reese's peanut butter is not that good.
It's not as good as it should be. There's no doubt about that. It's not. No. And I'm not a peanut butter snob. I mean, I will eat other brands, but I am very, very brand loyal to the Peter Pan creamy peanut butter. So,
and LaCharles is right. You are looking live at aisle 7.
No, you are looking live.
I'm kidding.
Okay, first question, because Kathy, one of our great members here, and I like to highlight the members when I can. Yeah. We're talking about pizza earlier because I made pizza tonight for Nancy's birthday. I want to get your take.
First pineapple. Off, happy birthday, Nancy! If she sees this. But her dad might see it, but maybe he'll relay it or you'll relay the message.
Chance both of them will see it. This is true.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
How do you feel about pineapple on a pizza?
I mean, it's not like a passion I run to go chase. But I'm never gonna judge anybody if it feels right in their heart. I know the truth about pineapple, and since I learned the truth about pineapple, I'm a little bit more hesitant than I used to be to eat.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask off air the follow-ups on the truth about pineapple.
No. It's the truth is it actually attacks your mouth when you eat it. It's a fruit that actually attacks your mouth. That's why you get that tingle from it and everything, because actually the chemicals and everything is actually attacking your mouth. And I learned that from this thing called the internet. So I hope it's right. Don't know if it is.
I'm sorry, Kathy. I'm not a fan of the pineapple, but
Mhm.
like Nick, I try to be, in my older age, I try to be more opening and accommodating. I do
Mhm.
not judge anyone for eating
Mm,
pineapple on a pizza. So
that's smart. Don't
some
do
of
it.
my best friends eat pineapple on their pizza.
I'm just excited now that I have 18 or 32 different options aisle wise. Some of them I'll never even go in, but I'll just take a photo in there for each Q&A.
I'm bringing this question up, Nick, just because it gives us a
Yeah.
chance for you and I both to give the exact same answer.
Ooh.
Scenario: Chiefs trade up with the Bears at 10.
9.
Fashanu, Odunzi, both there. Who are you taking? I know our answer is neither one.
Yeah. Well, the Bears will be at 9. So they would have traded with the Jets, and
And
that's
I
a
know
no.
I always pronounce his name incorrect. I pronounce, I think, both their names incorrectly, but I'm only
Um,
doing that because I know neither one of them are going to be a Chief and I don't have to worry about it.
those are some famous last words, man. And then there we are next Thursday, and you're like, well, oh boy. Yeah, I'm not only. I mean, you're. This is like a would you rather question. Yeah, I mean, with Ole, you're not. You're just. I feel like you're kind of getting Orlando Brown 2.0 from what I saw athletically. Rome, I'm not upset about. I would be good with. I just. I don't know if that's. I don't know. I don't know if I trade up to 9 for him though. That's the kicker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming at 10 that I'm trading up for Joe Alt. I mean, that's pretty much the only reason I'm trading up to 10. I mean,
Just
I
for
could
him,
see.
nobody else.
Okay,
Nobody else.
Neighbors and Harrison and Bowers, maybe Verse.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not trading up for a quarterback.
Yeah, you don't need to. And for everybody, if you do trade up, you're giving up the following first round pick or
Oh yeah,
your entire
no,
draft. One of
there's
the
no
two.
doubt
It's up
about
to
that.
you.
And but I know you meant 9 the Bears, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Electoral say Matt hating the Cardinals. The first time I ever saw him being wrong. Well, I appreciate that,
Mm,
but
mm.
yes, it's true. I do hate the Cardinals, but that's okay. Some of my best friends are Cardinals fans.
Well, I mean, it shows you can get along with everybody. Good job.
I'm saying that a lot tonight. Let's see what we got next. Dez, will it be possible to keep Creed, Nick, and Trey? If not, which would be the easiest to replace? I kind of touched on this myself earlier, but I'd like to get your, because we talked about this a little bit, Nick, but I don't know if I've ever actually that direct question as far as,
Mm-hmm.
maybe your priorities as far as keeping them, and which one would be easiest to replace is kind of a tricky one for me.
Yeah, that's because first kicker, Creed's one of the top 2 centers in the league, and with Jason Kelsey retiring,
Even when he's dribbling snaps back to the quarterback. We agree.
well, again, what did we say what I say on the podcast? He was hurt, and then now it's magically come out. Oh, hey, had an injury, he's trying to play through. Weird how that happens. But like with Creed, you got a guy who helps make the calls on the line. Him and Mahomes understand each other. You want to keep that continuity for as long as you can. Nick Bolton understands Steve Spagnuolo's defense. Steve Spagnuolo loves him. Linebackers coach and him, Brendan Daly, are on the same wavelength. It sounds like from the times Brendan's talked to you and I and everybody else in the media workroom during the pressers when position coaches were made available. So those 2 guys help set the structure in the scheme. So you pull either one of them out, you got some problems that you need OTAs to fix and in the middle of this, and training camp and all that stuff, but it's still going to take a while to get to that point. Look, I'm a huge Trey Smith fan, and I don't want to see him leave the Chiefs, but if you do have to, that's going to be the spot. It's a question of, do you want to pay $20 million to him as a guard, or do you have to trade him for assets next year, type of thing, to where you have to do the franchise tag again. then try to see if you can pick up something reasonable for him. Ideally, you want to get something signed long term. But Trey Smith is kind of, in all honesty, Trey Smith's one of the bigger assets you have if you do need to make a trade to recoup whatever you may trade from 2025 if you had to move up in whatever round you may have to. You hope that's not the case. You don't want that to be the case, but that he gives you a lot of bang for your buck trade value wise, and he's a good guard, very good guard, and so. But we'll see what happens to Joe Thuney financially next year, because what Joe Thuney's making, if you split that in half for the first year and gave that to Creed and Trey, I think you can keep Creed and Trey and make that sustainable with their cap hits equaling what Joe Thuney's is in pretty much a given year at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to, promote the hometown discount, fallacy or anything. But I mean, almost to a degree, I mean, I could almost see Trey Smith actually even being a guy who's like, nah, I don't need $22 million. I only need 20. I mean, he might be one of the rare people I could actually see maybe taking a hometown discount because he loves Kansas City. He's a perfect fit here. And I mean, you are going to get some guys who are going to be like, I mean, let's face it, Travis Kelce has left money on the table. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll certainly make the argument that Patrick Mahomes has left money on the table too, but I think Travis is the better one, because Travis, there's a couple of times in his career that Travis could have played hardball and just said, I'm not showing up until, you put another $25 million into my bank account in my contract. And he's never done it. And the fact that he is not every single year been the highest paid tight end of the league is a tremendous indication of just how dramatically underpaid he has been. And I mean, and he made the point and he wasn't complaining about it, but let's face it. I mean, with the way that receivers are making money now, Travis Kelce has been a $20 million player for a while. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he hasn't been making it, I mean, you want to talk about hometown discounts. Travis Kelce has given you a hometown discount. And I think it's worked out well for him because he's still going to get paid. And I think he's still going to have a relationship with the Chiefs long after he retires, because he's going to have a gold jacket. And I mean, Travis Kelce's never going to play another down for another team in the NFL. He's going to be a legend in this town. So I think it's good for him from a business standpoint there. So,
and he's going to have a steakhouse, Matt, with Mahomes.
He's going to have a steakhouse. He's going to continue to rake in the money. Yeah.
I just wonder what type of steaks they're going to have.
Good ones, obviously.
Well, yeah. Now that I just wonder what they're going to call them.
I don't know. I need some sort of Ron Swanson deep fried, steak or something. I don't know, but
that would be cool. Now that we've put this out in the universe, is there a way they can get Nick Offerman to show up for the grand opening and pretend to be Ron Swanson? I mean, I'm now going to ask like that at press conferences. I'm going to have to. So I'm going to have to send a message to somebody about that.
Yeah,
that's that rolling.
Definitely
coming up. I got a year to plan it out.
That's definitely coming up in the locker room the first chance I get. But I mean, just to dot the I on Dez's question here. I mean, that's what the easiest to replace is difficult for me, because easiest is probably Nick Bolton, and you've kind of already done it because the Chiefs signed Drew Tranquil with the backup notion that if they don't get to keep Nick Bolton, they've got a middle linebacker for 2025. So it's not ideal, but they've already kind of solved that one. So to a degree, I would say Nick Bolton is the easiest to replace, but from a financial standpoint, yeah, I mean, Trey's going to be the most expensive just because of the way that the markets are now for each of these positions. And Creed Humphrey is probably going to be criminally underpaid as being as good as he is. I mean, they can make him the top paid center in the league and he still might be underpaid, just like Kelce, so I have to, this is a completely, sideways comment here. But it's kind of folding in with the fact that, Jeremy just said, hello waffle, not mod, because I started thinking about waffles. And we've been having the peanut butter conversation. And Matt, I don't know. I have never heard of Adams before. I mean, I'll give any peanut butter a try. So I may have to do that. But show of hands, I mean, peanut butter on pancakes and waffles. Anyone else do this and like this? Because that is the greatest combination ever.
And guys, when Matt says hands, he means in the comment section. If you're ordering, if
I mean,
putting
you
them
can
up
raise your hands in your homes right now, and
Yeah.
on your cars, wherever you're
Yeah.
watching and
we
everything
just
like
aren't
that.
going to get the
But
feedback.
Luttrell, thank you. Someone else is on board here. Yes, I mean, my family is so hardcore peanut butter on pancakes and waffles that when members of my family have gone out to breakfast at places, my Aunt Karen, my Aunt Carol, both would bring a jar of peanut butter in their purse, just in case that the restaurant did not have peanut butter. So,
Sounds like they've ran into this occurrence a couple times in their life.
oh yeah, I mean, and there's nothing like it. You're in a Denny's and you're whipping out your own peanut butter and everything. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Village Inn may have peanut butter available. I can't remember, but you can find peanut butter in some places that serve breakfast, but it is absolutely, I mean, peanut butter waffle, waffle, waffle pancake, peanut butter, syrup, absolutely wonderful combination.
And doing a search, it looks like it's a Target and Walmart. So it's not something that's like in one region that we wouldn't be able to find, Matt.
There you go. Pano, don't you guys think Xavier Leggett's upside is as good as any of the top draft prospects? I'll admit, I'm very iffy on Xavier Leggett, Nick, and I don't remember I'm sure, well, I know we talked about it. It was just so long ago now that I can't remember what your take on Leggett was when we did the receivers.
I mean, I know a lot of people out there keep trying to compare him to DK Metcalf. And like, that's why people keep like, that train that's going along right now, that bandwagon, whatever the heck you want to call it. A lot of people are hopping on because they think he's going to be DK Metcalf 2.0. I didn't see that from what I saw on the coach's film. I saw a big body receiver that I mean, athletically, he does well for his size, but there was just parts of his game that I'm just like, I don't know if that's going to help the Chiefs as much as some people want it to.
I mean, my concern is that, I mean, I'm just not sure if I see enough consistency and body of work from him. I mean, that's just the only, I mean, especially when you look at the rest of the group and everything, and, and I think, and getting him at the right place would also be pretty key to me. I mean, if you're talking about getting, Leggett in the third, I'm okay with that. But I'm just worried that I look and I know he had the motorcycle accident, and there was obviously the pandemic too, because he came in 2019. But this is a guy, I mean, he just statistically, you look at his body of work, and I factor in his age too, and it screams Cornell Powell to me. I mean, Cornell was incredibly productive in the 1 year at Clemson. And the reason I mean, and arguably the reason why was because he was playing against a bunch of really good receivers and didn't get his opportunity. But that was the point, is that he wasn't good enough to beat those other guys out. So yes, he was productive when he got his chance, but he didn't get his chance because he wasn't better than those guys. So it doesn't mean that he's just because he's following in the footsteps of some other good receivers and everything. And I'm just worried about, and I say this, because even at the same time, I'm okay with the Chiefs if they wanted to take Austin Booker at 64. I would be better with that than Xavier Leggett, just because, I mean, I feel like there's the age difference. Booker's a younger player. I think there's maybe reason to believe that he got better coaching and got an opportunity to break out. I mean, I'm just, I don't know. That's kind of my little thing, and I could be completely wrong. I mean, Brett Veach probably forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, but I don't know. I get bad statistical vibe jujus from Xavier Leggett, but I could be wrong. The Eagles added 4 to 5 void years to Hurts' contract to afford Brown and Smith at 25 annual per year. Would Veach consider doing that for a top receiver? I don't think so. I mean, partly because, the only player you have that you would do that with would be Mahomes. And the Mahomes contract is already structured in an incredibly team friendly way for them to flexibly move money around. I mean, crazier things have happened, Nick. I mean, obviously, the Eagles made a trade during the draft to get a world class receiver. I mean, I haven't heard anything of this nature yet, but could you see the Chiefs, trying to trade for a receiver during the draft?
I think it would just be a matter of who would be on the market, and I personally think somebody. I don't know. It depends on where they're at with Brian Thomas and Lad McConkey, like where they're at with those two guys, and if they're off the board at that point, then I think they start to decide what they may or may not do. I think Xavier Worthy is going to go higher than we expect in the first round. So I don't think I'll be surprised if Worthy's there at 24. Doesn't mean it won't happen. I'm just saying with what's going on, I'll be surprised if he's still there at past 24. So I just don't know if the Niners are going to be willing to shop Brandon Ayuk to the Chiefs because they want to get back to the Super Bowl and they know that doesn't help their cause. And the question is, do the Chiefs really want to pay a big amount for a wide receiver that's going to want similar to Tyreek Hill money when the decision they had to make previously was, were they going to pay Tyreek Hill or Chris Jones, and who gave them better trade value? And you've seen over the past year and a half, it's played out now to where Chris got the big money, Tyreek got traded, and they rebuilt the defense with it.
Yeah, I mean, could it be done? Yes. I mean, there's ways to do it. It would be tough, but I mean, I think you'd have to have the right combination. But even then, I mean, if the Chiefs were going to get a, say legitimate number one receiver back in trade one, you kind of do come back next to the question, well, then why did you ever trade Tyreek Hill? I mean, the reason was because you got a bunch of assets back. I'm trying to, I have a difficulty kind of matching up the right receiver with the right assets that the Chiefs could give up without basically redoing the Tyreek Hill trade in a different direction. I mean, obviously there's sometimes that receivers are available at a specific price for a reason, and sometimes maybe you can get something done. But yeah, I mean, if I'm the 49ers, I mean, there's no way I'm letting Ayuk go. I mean, yeah, they want to get back to the Super Bowl. Hey, that's not going to happen without him. So yeah, I just have a difficulty finding the right target. I mean, that I think would work, because also if I'm the 49ers, I'm not trading him for probably the same value that the Eagles got, with Brown. I mean, if I'm the 49ers, I want the moon for Ayuk. So, yeah, I mean, it's Brett Veach has been a trader during the draft, but we've never seen him go after a player yet during the draft. We've seen him do it before the draft, but not like in the middle of the draft, like, like the Brown trade was. But that's just me. It's maybe I'm just making too much out of it. I don't know. David Howard, which I really hoped and wish was, the former Royals utility infielder, but it probably isn't. But David, I love that you have a great name. Didn't the Chiefs try to trade for Brown, who compares to him in the draft? I mean, I think how much the Chiefs were involved in trying to go after for Brown before he went to the Eagles, I don't know for sure. Probably to a certain degree. I mean, there was some talk there, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, maybe it's just kind of like Brett Veach's criticism that he got for, not putting resources into the cornerback position. It wasn't that he didn't try. It just hadn't happened yet until it did. But, maybe it's the same thing with, trading for a, player during the draft. Maybe there's been opportunities when he's tried to do it, but just hasn't been able to get it done yet.
Yeah. Well, and the only time we've really heard about the Brown portion is from Brown talking about on his podcast that the Chiefs inquired about it. So the key word I think he said was that they inquired. So it doesn't mean they had 2 weeks of talks and, we got to a certain point. It just means that he knows that they inquired about him. So how far that developed, I think here's the reality. Every good general manager checks on everything in the league. They know who's on the trade market. they know who's available, and they know what the cost is. And you know why? Because they made the calls and inquired. So that's what you have to do. That's the number one thing. Just like for people that don't know, Howie Roseman always, I can't remember if he always starts at a first or second round pick. Anytime anybody calls, he's like, how much would it take to get that player? Second round pick. Or I can't remember first or second round pick. But that's what Howie's known for around the league. Like, that's just the running joke. And then they get to the bottom of it. But I mean, yeah, so Howie Roseman's going to check on everybody. Just because even if you don't get that player, and even if your name's associated with it, it just gives each general manager the opportunity to not only see what's available out there in the market from a trade perspective, but if they're willing to trade hypothetically their wide receiver one, then they may be in the market during the draft for that. So it's basically it's fact-finding mission for everybody involved, and that's why good general managers do that.
There you go. This is absolutely true. Darren asking, Troy Franklin at number 32 or Devontae Walker at number 64? Your thoughts, Nick?
Franklin, I think you can probably get him in the 40 range, so I think you can trade back a little bit on that. And even if you missed out on him, there's still wide receivers that are in his caliber coming out of college. It's just a matter of when you go. This is the part that like Matt and I don't have, and this is part nobody that's on this for the most part probably has, is we're not in the draft room with all the area scouts going over it and their projections and collectively know how many times that area scout's been right, how many times that player personnel guy's been right, and what did the position coaches say? What did Andy Reid say? What did Matt Nagy say? And then you go over that with each one of them to give you a consensus. And what are the characteristics and what are the consensuses that keep coming up in the discussions? Because that's who the player, if everybody's noticing that, then that's who that player is. And then what are the things that they're seeing that each of their eyes and their experience in football are given just those tiny little details that can help mold that player. So for me, watching Franklin, if the Chiefs do draft him, I'm not going to be upset about it because they need to get a receiver, and he's a talented receiver. I just think he's a guy that's probably going to go in the second round, early on in the second round. Walker wasn't really – I mean, look, I saw him as a vertical receiver that ran a lot of contested catches near the sidelines, and he always seemed to drift. And I wasn't a huge fan of how often he drifted towards the boundary instead of staying on top of his route, if I remember correctly. So that, Walker hasn't been in any of the mock drafts where I'm selecting a player, even though he has been on the board.
Yeah, I'm kind of this kind of brings me to, what my kind of experience has been with the mock draft simulations and everything is that I have not reached a point where I have been happy with any of the choices available at 64. I just think that, regardless of what position the Chiefs go in the first round, whether it's receiver, it's tackle, door number 3, regardless, to me, every time I go through any of one of these, experiments and one of these simulations or exercises, whatever you want to call it, every time I go through it, like I said, I'm just never pleased with what's available at 64. It just, to me, feels like a lot of, what they are, third round picks. And I think I may have mentioned this on the pod I mentioned it to somebody the other day, Nick. It could have been you. But one thing, Brett Veach has said a lot is, and I've heard other, NFL evaluators say this too. Typically, there's 15 to 20 players you get a first round grade on. And then there's usually another pocket of 30 players that you kind of really like after that. And then after that, you've got these guys who are late second, third, early fourth round picks that are indistinguishable. That, one team could have one of these guys as a late second, and another team can have them as an early fourth. And there's absolutely no difference between them. I mean, that's just how fine the line is and how big the distinction is. Well, you do the math. I mean, if you've got 15 players that are, you have a first round grade on, and you got another 30 that you like for like a second round, 30 plus 15, 45. I mean, the chances of one of your 45 favorite players being there at 64 is pretty slim. So I mean, to me, Troy Franklin, like you said, I mean, I think he's probably more of an early second round guy, and I wouldn't have a problem with the Chiefs taking Troy Franklin, but I think you're better off if you're the Chiefs, whomever your second round guy is, whether it's a Troy Franklin, a different receiver, an edge rusher, a tackle, whomever it is. I think the Chiefs are just going to have to go get him. And that's what that third round pick from Tennessee is perfect for. Because if you don't use it to move up from 32 to 25 to get in front of Buffalo to take a receiver, then I think you're absolutely using it to move up in the second round to get the player that you really want instead of waiting at 64 for them not to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell that to you. I think you and I are preaching to the choir on that one. I did, Sharon, you asked the question that I asked Andy Reid there, well, a version of it this week, because any whispers of a new wide receiver coach. I asked Andy yesterday in the presser, what other changes there were going to be on the coaching staff, and really negligible. The only coaching staff change that has gone on this offseason with Ken Flagel retiring. Rod Wilson is taking over his job and moving into the outside linebackers coach. Kyle Whittingham's getting a promotion, and then they hired Louis Dazio, I believe is his last name. He's coming in. He's another guy. His dad was head coach at Boston College, right, Nick? If I remember correctly. I think I believe so. I could be crazy, but I wrote the story, so you think I'd be able to remember 24 hours later, Nick?
Life happens. You had a lot of pizzas.
Young guy, that's had a lot of family experience in the game and everything like that. So those are the only changes on the coaching staff that have gone on this year. So offensive coaching staff is completely intact, and that does mean Connor Embry will still be your wide receivers coach. So trying to get. For some reason, I am not getting. I don't know if anybody's asked a question in the last 10 minutes, but I can't get them to come up. Have you seen anything, Nick? And maybe I've exhausted the questions.
Yeah, I think you. Well, I mean, the last one's at 8:19, so I would assume that you last exhausted it to where we're gonna have to say last call on questions.
Last call on questions.
Look, David Howard just popped up.
There you go. Thanks for liking my name. You've had it for 60 years. Well, there you go.
All right, I put last call.
Love the story. Love the story, David. There you go. Last call. And yeah, I mean, actually, let me pop over there, because every once in a while I would get a question on Twitter that doesn't get asked over here, and then I forget to bring it up. So now that we've got that in a little second here, let me pop on over. Anything else on top of your mind, Nick, that you need to get off your chest?
I mean, we'll see how things come together in the days ahead, but there may be some bonus episodes of 41 is the Mic that we're working on right now to book some. It wouldn't be Matt and I doing it. We'll do the traditional one on Sunday. If there's any bonus episodes, it's some of the guests we've been trying to work on to have their own self-sustained podcast ahead of the draft. There's some prospects we've been reaching out to through proper channels to try to get them on the show. There's one we may be getting later this week. We'll see. We're not going to say until the episode's fully recorded, and that's all locked in. And then we've got a guest potentially. Well, we have them booked for next week. Former NFL executive that we potentially have on the show. Matt and I have been trying to get some prospects and some people that are in the draft community that have worked in NFL rooms to be able to kind of help guide you guys through some stuff and just questions we have as well. So we're hoping to get that done and situated. So we will, if it all gets done, when it's officially recorded, we've got it. Then we'll announce who they are, and we will have that up within a couple hours, ideally, each time. But there are some players that we've reached out to their agents that are potentially going to be drafted. Even one that looks like a strong possibility to be a first rounder. So we're working on that. Gotten stiff armed by a couple of them, and they were and just so you know, they are players of interest that you would want to find out about. So like we're trying to think of you guys and players that you would be interested in learning about or learning from or hearing about them. It's just, once you get into a certain point in time, especially with almost a week out from draft, they've been busy with the official 30 visits with teams that officially end on Wednesday. So that's when I'm kind of crossing our fingers that Matt and I can get a couple more commitments to do a couple more of those, just because they're not having to do Zooms or have to go to NFL team facilities. And we're kind of hoping we can get a couple of those, but we do want to have a couple of them just to send them out in the future so agents can see, oh, okay, this is what they do with it. Because I could understand if I'm in the shoes of an agent that's trying to protect your client's draft stock, you don't necessarily want them out there saying anything that could negate them with a certain team or anything. So I totally understand that as well. So we'll see how things work out here in the next couple of weeks, in the next week, actually. And then, that's that, Matt, that's what I've got. And as you know, I called you once. I'm like, hey, dude, they got back to me. I'm excited about the one I called you about earlier today.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. And I'm sorry, I forgot to send the invite to you. I mean, I could just completely and totally fell asleep at the switch there.
Well, you're talking about this, or
yes,
the ones you're working on email?
The invite for the Q&A tonight.
I'm over that one. We will not be asking about flat Earth. No, that's not going to be happening.
I was going through, and now I can't find them. I was going through looking for some questions that I overlooked. One question was about whether the Chiefs might drop Rashee Rice. And honestly, I mean, based on the information that we have at this point, I can't see that happening. No. I mean, I think that the Chiefs will absolutely continue to let the process come out. I mean, and play through. And you heard what Andy Reid said yesterday. I expect we'll probably hear something very similar from Brett Veach on Thursday. They're going to let the investigation continue and see what happens. But honestly, I mean, there's nothing that has been discovered at this point or revealed that I think would make the Chiefs feel that way. So no, I mean, at this point, nothing that's come out that I think would make the Chiefs feel like that they need to cut ties. So,
and then like Andy said, you hope he learns from it, or that he learned from it. Once Andy says something like that, like you're like, okay, they're on good ground, or they're comfortable with what they know about the situation and where it's at.
Yeah. I would say once again,
we're getting some more now, Matt, in the last call.
All right. Last call. The Chiefs taking swings for the three-peat, moving up in multiple rounds to get 2-3 guys they want. That's an intriguing question to me, Nick. Are you going to move up in the first round and the second round?
I don't know if you're going to be able to do both. I think you're going to have to do one or the other. So, like, if you're wanting to move up in the first, it depends how far you want. I guess my thing is, how far do you want to go up? Like, if you're wanting to go up into the 20s, then I think you can do it the first and third, as long as it's an NFC team. But if you're going to risk it for the whole biscuit, Matt, and try to get to that number 9 spot of the Bears, or number 10, or wherever right there, you're giving up at least a first round pick the following year. And then you're probably giving up a third or something else, depending on how many other people are bidding. So at that point, you're if you move up, you're having to sacrifice something in the third or fourth if you moved up in both rounds. So like if you try to move from 64 to wherever, then you're going to have to sacrifice a third that year, or the third the following year, maybe even a fourth or whatever. And then that's kind of where it's going to get a little tricky for you at that point. And if you do, whatever you take away from your 2025, you're having to try to figure out ways who on your roster can help you recoup some of those picks in terms of numbers to help you continue building your roster in 2025. So,
yeah,
that is the unique part. Matt, how about yourself?
I mean, especially, okay. I mean, on the one hand, 2025, you right now have 7 picks in that group. You are in line to maybe get 2 7th-round comp picks, but you could also get 0 7th-round comp picks next year. I mean, the Chiefs are on that fine of a line. I can't remember if it's the Willie Gay or the Tommy Townsend one, is literally like right now the last comp pick and the formula over the cap. And I think the other one is like third from last. So, I mean, they're on the cusp of getting 2 7th rounds, but that's not a huge amount of comp picks. So I wouldn't, count that in your formula as far as, but the Chiefs do right now have 7 draft picks for next year. So, I mean, if you wanted to dip into next year's allotment, you can. I don't believe they've touched anything from 2026 yet. So I think they have all of their own 2026 picks. So yeah, I mean, you could conceivably, and I could also look at, considering especially the free agent class that the Chiefs have next year. I mean, they could end up with a lot of 2026 comp picks. So maybe you're okay if you wanted to pull from the future. And you do have that, obviously, the one extra third next year, which we've been talking about. I mean, if that Tennessee pick doesn't get traded next week, I'll be absolutely stunned. I think it's just right there waiting to move up, and whether it's the first or the second round. But I mean, yeah, I could conceivably see it. And obviously the Chiefs haven't been afraid to move around too, in later rounds if they see somebody that they like. And sometimes that means just swapping picks. Maybe they're going to move up 10 spots in the 4th round, and it means just moving back in the 7th, or moving a 7. They got 2 7ths next year. So maybe it's like using one of those to be able to move up. I mean, hey, if you told me that Brett Veach was going to move up 3 times in this draft, I wouldn't be surprised, because it's Brett Veach. I mean, he sees something, he's going to go get it. So,
and those that question you're kind of asking as well, what Matt and I are talking about, if we do get that thing recorded with a certain guest that's former general manager in the league, there's going to be some trade questions, and I've already warned them, hey, these trade questions, we're going to be asking some of these trade questions. This is the biggest thing Chiefs fans are going to be curious about coming into that night. So I've already kind of given them a heads up on that to kind of help us work through some scenarios about how that would go. So I'm telling you, I'm really excited if we're able to get at least those 2 locked up in terms of recording that we're working on. If we get more than that, I'm really going to be pumped.
Yep. And I think maybe the last question here, ever changer KC. I'm only bringing this up because even though we talked about it before, I love talking about the schedule. So
you do. And you just reminded me that I need to send that email out for that other guest we're trying to get about that type of stuff when it does happen in May.
We're hoping that we can get somebody in before the NFL schedule comes out to just talk about the scheduling process and about how you schedule Kansas City.
They may not be open until they may not be available till after, though.
You never know. I mean, it's after the fact. I mean, because there's no doubt. I mean, I think that right now, the Chiefs are the most difficult team in the NFL to schedule for. I mean, because one, everybody wants that game at a certain time in a certain place. I mean, they and the Dallas Cowboys are the 2 most in-demand TV products. So they're the ones that you have to move around the most, and the Cowboys are the ones you have to schedule the most to make sure that their TV partners get all the games that they want. But as far as who's going to open on conceivably the Thursday night that we expect the Chiefs to open on September 5th, I think the Texans are a really good option. Now, the NFL, like last year, Chiefs and NFC teams, Lions opened up, and it's at least seems like that's the direction that the NFL wants to go, has been doing those cross-conference games that have a little bit less meaning. Obviously the NFL is going to want to put the Texans in a lot of places this year. They love CJ Stroud and they love Houston market. They want to put that play team in everywhere. So, I mean, that's a big one. I think Tampa might be the sneaky one, because it is an NFC AFC game. It's going to have not as big of an impact, but it's still kind of a good brand. Baker versus Patrick, former Texas Tech teammates. It's a good storyline. If it ended up being the Saints, it's not going to stun me, because that's kind of like, to me, what the Lions were last year. But I think it's probably one of those 3. And I mean, the best game of them all, I think, would be the Texans. But I'm leaning towards right now, until I hear anything different, I'm leaning towards Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the 3 most realistic possibilities that you and I have chatted about on many Q&As. Yeah, it's just like the Texans, if you put them in that spot, Yes, you're gonna have a good game. Yes, it'll be an intriguing game. You'll do great ratings wise. But I think the NFL knows deep down they're going to do great ratings wise on that Thursday night, no matter what, because Mahomes is involved.
Yeah.
So, like, they don't necessarily need to use that right then and there. They can give that to another network partner if they wanted to and kind of space that out to where maybe they want that to be a, even though NBC will have the Thursday night game, maybe they want to save that for a different Sunday night. Or maybe they want to save that for a Monday night football game for ESPN, or maybe, CBS wants it to be their marquee game because CBS doesn't want to have the Bills and Bengals saved as much as they did previously when Diggs was there. So, it's just, there's a lot of games on the Chiefs schedule that I think all networks are going to want, and each network's going to get 2 or 3 of them at minimum, and then they're just going to have to space them out. But the thing that would be interesting if they have the Texans on Thursday Night Football is the fact that they get to market CJ Stroud and get to build his brand and build the exposure for him and the Texans and DeMarco Ryans and Stephon Diggs and all that type of stuff. They get to build up the Houston Texans into the next, potentially marquee franchise in terms of advertising, and get that Houston market and really kind of invigorate that Houston market and get them excited overall, and have that, not only have that ratings number, but have Kansas City, Houston markets probably, do really well from a ratings perspective. So all that combined, it makes a ton of sense if they go that road, but people are still going to watch if it's the Saints or the Bucks against Mahomes because it's Mahomes.
Yeah. And we're going to be getting the schedule in a month. I mean, we'll find out, when everything's going to be. I think the most interesting thing that I still have my eye on is that whether or not the Chiefs get an international game this year, because it kind of slipped by, I think, a lot of us, but just before the Super Bowl, during Super Bowl week, the NFL made an adjustment to the international scheduling policy that you no longer had to wait in line, that you could volunteer for an international game without having to wait through, because they have the process now where everybody's going to have to play an international game, because some teams have been ducking out of it, giving away a home game. So the new policy is that everybody's going to have a international game within a certain, time frame. So, basically, I think it's going to be end up being like every 4 or 5 years that a team is going to have to, give up a home game. It's part of the 17 game schedule was that this was going to be baked in, that you're going to give up one of your extra home games. But the original policy was at least indicating that it was going to be a balance as far as, when teams did their home and road commitments to going international. But the NFL made an adjustment in that said that teams could volunteer to commit to a road game before their time was required. And the Chiefs have made it clear they to the NFL, they want to play overseas basically any chance that they get. And they want to play in Germany. So, I mean, the Chiefs playing in Germany this year as a road team is a possibility, because Chiefs have said that they are willing to do it and they volunteered for it. So doesn't mean that they will get it, because there are obviously some other teams who want to play in Germany too. They've got that market. Might just, and honestly, I don't know if I'm the Chiefs, I really want to play an international game when I'm trying to three-peat. But obviously it worked out for them last year. But be on the lookout, because that is one thing. That Mark Donovan told us at the Super Bowl in February was that the Chiefs will take any opportunity that they can, and that they did throw their hat in the ring to play an international game this year. So we'll see what happens.
Matt, we got 2 lightning round questions here at the end that have popped up.
Let's see. I saw which the other one.
And there's Darren Frank.
Oh, I see it. I see Darren. Cortland Sutton is a prime trade candidate. There's no way the Broncos trade with the Chiefs, right? I would have to think so. But what do you think, Nick?
Yeah, they're not doing that.
Just flat out, no, they're not doing that. No. I think there would have to be absolutely no other pursuer, no other team that wants to make a trade, or that the Chiefs blow them away. But I'm with you. I would think that I think the Broncos might just, release him before they traded him to the Chiefs. I say that facetiously. Yeah, I'm going to say no. Frank, this is the year Veach moves out of the first. Seems like the receiver offensive line quality hits a cliff at 32. I mean, hey, it's the third time that the Chiefs have had pick number 32, and the first two times they tried to trade out of 32 and they couldn't get a buyer. I mean, it's going to be the same way this year. The only way you're going to get out of 32 is if somebody wants 32.
And normally when people want 32, it's because the quarterback's on the board.
Yeah.
But they want to get that fifth-year option on. So that's where you're going to have to look at what Michael Penix potentially does. That's where you're going to have to see where J.J. McCarthy goes. And then that's also where you're going to have to see Bo Nix. Those are going to be the three that you're going to have you're going to be keeping tabs on, because if all of them are off the board by the time it gets to the Chiefs pick, there's probably not a lot of people trying to trade up other than apparently the Raiders to try to get Michael Myers from the Chiefs. Like they tried to last year in that trade that ended up on or the story of the trade that ended up on Albert Breer's Monday Morning Quarterback, I think, where he basically talked about, or it's Peter King, one of the two, but either way, one of the two had it to where the Raiders were trying to trade up to the Chiefs 32 spot to take the tight end out of Notre Dame, Michael Myers. So, yeah, and the Chiefs, here's the one benefit you have. The draft is not in Kansas City. So Clark Hunt's not going out there with the 3 Super Bowl trophies that announced the 32nd pick this time. And it's not in Kansas City to cap the night off, with the Chiefs. And with the 32nd pick, the Chiefs have traded out. Thank you, Kansas City. Have a good night.
Yeah.
That a whole big party.
Yeah. It wasn't going to happen last year, but even if they had wanted to, I'm not sure that they were going to be able to move out of there anyway. But this year, I mean, maybe the possibility, but you're right. I mean, if New England passes on a quarterback in the first round, do they go after one in the second? Or is there a team that's worried that, New England might, or the Washington might go after a quarterback at the beginning of the second round and they want to get in front of him? If Michael Penix is there a team that wants him that's worried that New England might take him? And not only then do you get to jump in front of a team that might take a quarterback, but then you get the 5th-year option. So that, to me, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the best case scenario, is that there's a team that wants a quarterback and they're afraid that somebody that's drafting early on Friday night can get them. So, Luttrell, last question. It has had the question about what's the incentive to volunteer, referring to going overseas. Money. I mean, that's really it. I mean, the Chiefs are trying to expand their brand internationally, and they've targeted Germany. They want to build an audience there, and they feel like the best way to do that is to play there. So they feel like there's a lot of money that they can make in Germany and make in Europe, and getting a foothold over there. So building the brand is about the biggest part of it, right, Nick?
Yeah, no, that's the whole incentive of it, is you're trying to make your brand go global as much as possible. So if you get people in Germany, or you get people in Latin America, or you get people in other continents that have an interest in the Chiefs and the brand and, Mahomes and all that type of stuff, that's just more potential money that your franchise can make. And potentially, depending on how popular you are in certain areas, that could be able to pay for a couple contracts. You never know. So
you never know. And I said last question. We got one more question.
Yeah, final question.
Window, and mostly because one, it's a question that you and I both want to talk about. And two, I'm assuming that Bill is not coming from Lawrence, Kansas. But hey, could the Chiefs move up for Joe Alt?
So
tell me yes, Nick. Just say yes.
What's gonna have to happen? And this is what's gonna have to happen. There's going to have to be a run of like 5 quarterbacks in the top 10, maybe 4. I don't know. It just depends. But you're going to need 4 to 5 quarterbacks to go in the top 10, ideally top 6. You're going to need the Giants. You're going to need the Chargers to pass on Alt. And the Chargers may trade out. If somebody's really, wants a quarterback, it would be smart for the Chargers to trade back. So I'm keeping that option open. Giants. Are the Giants one of those teams that moves up for a quarterback? If they are, then you eliminate their offensive line aspect. Then you get to the next one on the list, the Titans. Do the Titans want a receiver, or do they want a tackle? The Titans is where the question kind of comes into play. Is what ends up happening there? Is there a way that the Chiefs can get to, to the Titans 7 in that spot? Then at 8 with the Falcons right now, with Raheem Morris there, they're probably going defensive line, edge rusher, speed more than anything. And then at 9 is where the Bears come into play. And do the Bears want a receiver right then and there? Or are they willing to trade back to try to get more draft assets for either this year or for next year? And if that's going to be your money spot at number 9 right now, but you're going to need all those situations I just talked about. Those are the things that are going to have to happen. Or if it's not Joe Alt, and it's something that I posed to Matt earlier today, if Malik Neighbors drops like he did in Peter Schrager's mock draft, do you go make the play for Neighbors at number 9? Is that the guy you go move up for to give you your big splash so you can try to three-peat, and you also potentially get a wide receiver who can kind of help take the stress off of Travis Kelce long term and maybe be that Jamar Chase type of player for the Chiefs, which is what Neighbors looks like? And then have you done your background research on him to feel comfortable with who he is as a player, what his personality is like, how he'd potentially fit into the locker room, all that type of stuff? And then there's the final guy, Brock Bowers. Is Bowers somebody that you're willing to give up an additional following first round pick for the following year? I personally wouldn't, even though he is the best tight end, because I'm as soon as we get it done, I got to go watch 5 more tight ends, and I'm done with tight ends. I'm moving on to running backs tonight. But Bowers is the one where I'm like, I'm not moving up that far and giving up an additional one. But for Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, you got my vote.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably twist my arm into the top 3 receivers and absolutely Alt. I mean,
and Marvin Harrison Jr., if he fell, I don't think he's going to fall that far, but if he did, that would be another guy that I'm like, yeah.
And I'll even put a Dunzy in there. I mean, I would throw all 3 of those receivers into that category. That if there's one of them that's available 9-10, and Joel, absolutely. I mean, and you're right. I mean, I think that the more likely possibility, I mean, it could be Alt slipping through, because I can absolutely make the case that, you could see 3 receivers and 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10 picks. And in that case, all you need is for, one crazy team to decide, well, okay, we're going to take Dallas Turner. We're going to take the corner. All of a sudden, hey, you're at 10 and Joe Alt hasn't gone off yet. And then, oh well, hey, maybe somebody needs Brock Bowers, and hey, it would be great if all of a sudden you're at 11 and Joe Alt's available. I just can't see that happening. But if it did, I would have no problems moving 32 this year, a 1 next year, a 3, and I would throw in something else for Joe Alt. Because I just think if you do that, barring an injury, knock on wood, you've solved that problem for 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I don't disagree with anything you said. And
you've solved the problem for the rest of Mahomes' career.
That would be the hope. And then for Brandon there, when he's talking about we'll go get Worthy, I think there's a lot of other teams that are interested in Worthy that aren't just, aren't the Chiefs exclusive. Like I'm just telling you right now, I got a feeling the Colts have their eye on him. I got a feeling there's some other teams that are in the teens and low 20 or high 20. I consider high 20s. So I'm talking like, 20, 21, 22. I think there's some teams that all covet that speed. And it would not stun me one bit if the Miami Dolphins got reckless and added Worthy to pair with Hill and Waddle.
Because the Dolphins don't have enough speed.
So they want more all the time. That's what kept them. It wasn't the freezing temperatures and no offensive line.
Not enough speed.
And half of a decimated defense and injury. It was the fact they didn't have additional speed for Tua to not have time to throw to.
There you go.
So,
yes.
Anything's possible. But, I think if they move up, it didn't have to be a speed receiver. It's just got to be somebody that's going to be dominant and is going to be a number 1 receiver, because what you're trying to do. Sorry, I'm responding to Brandon's comment. If you want to put it up there at the bottom, 855, so everybody can see it. No, next one. Nailed it. It's not necessarily about speed. Like what you're trying to do, if you trade up for that level, you were trying to find the next cornerstone to replace Travis Kelce. That is what that purpose is if you trade up for who could be your true number one wide receiver, especially if it's going to be one of the top 10 guys or maybe somebody falls out of the top 10. That is the reason you were doing it. You were giving yourself the solution to potentially replace Travis Kelce long term, not necessarily at the tight end position, but how important he is to that offense. And that takes pressure off of him. So that is the reason you would do that if you do potentially make a move like that at the level Matt and I are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, because I could absolutely make the case that the Chiefs could take a number of different styles of receivers. I mean, do they still need a deep threat? Yes. Does it have to be a 5'9", 170-pound speedster? No, it could be a 6'2" guy who can really move. And can take, catch the ball, go up and get it, make contested catches. I mean, it can be a T. Higgins type. So there's different ways you can go about it. I mean, as much as it was fun to watch Tyreek Hill just outrun people and go crazy, there are other ways to throw the ball downfield.
Thanks, Matt. All right, Matt.
All right. I think I've said enough. I have to go continue making pizzas, by the way. So.
Oh, you're not done?
I'm not done. No.
Oh man.
No, because when I make pizza, I mean, it's like I said, it's from scratch. So I'm not just making a couple, and I don't make like 14-inch pizzas. These are more of your probably 10-inch personal pizzas. Okay. So like 6 slices. So, I mean, you could eat one of these, I could eat one of these whole. I mean,
so when will these be done?
Well, 2 of them are already done because Nancy got her pizza first. So she had one that was the hamburger pizza. Mm-hmm. So that was pickles and sausage. Mm-hmm. The second one was just sausage and mushroom. So those two are done. I will probably make 4 more. I think I have dough for 4 more pizzas.
And you're doing that tonight?
I'm doing that tonight. It only takes about 10 minutes to bake them. So
the only reason I'm asking is because I want to see photos of these on Twitter afterwards.
Okay, I'll take photos of my pizzas afterwards.
So everybody that's had to listen to the pizza story and been curious about it will be able to see the final result. I think that's all that we're asking.
That's all you need. I mean, I can absolutely provide that. So
that's definitely what I'm requesting.
That is not a problem.
All right, Matt. Well, that's where I got to bid you adieu. Then I think we close this one out at this point.
All right, we're closing out. Like Nick said, we're hoping that maybe we'll have a couple of appearances maybe at some point in the next week with some surprises. We'll see if we get some interviews that come in. If not, Sunday, 41 is the mic. We will be doing our mock draft. And
Matt and I pick all 7 rounds for
trying to predict what we think will happen. And we'll have some fun on that. And then next week will be a wall-to-wall draft coverage starting on Tuesday with the Q&A and everything. So with that, we will see you hopefully on the 41 is the mic. And if not, we will see you here on the YouTube. Everybody have a great week. Thank you once again.